I think we can all agree that Havik is a really fun character to use, but he's not particularly good either. Like, he's fine. I don't think there's any character in Mortal Kombat 1 that's bad per se. Just, once again, there can't just be everyone at number 1. Even if every character was busted, there would still be a character that's more busted than the other characters. And I think that same rule applies to Mortal Kombat 1. Every character is really good. It's just, once again, there's still characters that are better than others. To me, I do think Havik is probably closer to bottom 5 than people would like to admit. So today I wanted to spend some time giving some ideas on what buffs I think NetherRealm should give him to at least make him more of a better character. So the first one, the first and most obvious one I think most Havik mains would not be mad at is the back 2. I think that this should be 15 frames, 15 or 16. I personally would say 15. Simply just because, as far-reaching as it is, I do think there are more far-reaching buttons than this. It's kind of hard to really confirm, for one, considering, yeah, outside of this move on hit, most of these don't have enough hits done to guarantee this or jail somebody into it. So there's not many ways to make sure to lock down the opponent to ever really be able to use the frames, because that's one of Havik's bigger problems. He really has no way to use all the plus frames that he has. Like, all this is plus frames, but the problem is he really doesn't have a lot of ways to enforce these frames. Like, if he had a mid that was like Johnny's, then I think Havik would be like way higher than he actually is, simply just because like his frame data is really good. It's just a lot of his moves are way too slow to really do anything with them. But if you make back to maybe 15 frames and you mix it with this, you make it 15 frames, you can make punish windows for this man way better. Since this is probably one of his like strongest damage starters next to the 2-2, or I believe the forward 4 is one of his damaging starters as well. But one of that would immediately make him a better character. Next, his forward 4. This should be 12 frames. I don't understand why this is 15. If you do this and make this 15 frames, it drops to 12, which at the very least, or if you made this 12, that makes it a 9-frame low, which at least gives you a little bit of time to really enforce a lot of the plus frames that Havik does have. It's just, once again, he has no way to really lock an opponent down besides, you know, plus frames into down 1, into down 4, some along those lines, to force your opponent to respect the option so you can keep going for it. Really, beyond these two, I don't really think anything else Havik has is slow, or even the other options are fine. I don't mind this being unsafe. I don't mind any of the other buttons being slow. Another buff I would like to see is an increase on the hit advantage on Havik's down 4. I won't say it needs to be as crazy as down 3, but I would say if it's it's +9, I would make it +14 to where you have a better shot at this, because even if you hit this, your opponent can still back up. They can still just down 1 you. I don't even think it's fast enough for this to be guaranteed, because if you land this, your opponent can still back up, and the problem is this doesn't cover as much distance as this does. So if you do this and your opponent is a little bit too far away, they pretty much can back dodge away and, you know, hit you. But if this is like my +14, even +16, like the down 3, you can do this, you can do this, and it's near guaranteed. I'm not going to say it's 100% guaranteed you're going to always land it, but you at least have a better shot of keeping your opponent locked down. Next, like move changes, if I were to, you know, change what's it called, I would much rather have this have a flatter arc, because as you can see, when it leaves its body, it goes in a more like diagonally upwards instead of just more flat. Like, you know, most projectiles, it just is straight flat from like Havik's head to Reptile's head. It's just a flat arc. Whereas Havik's, it just goes a little bit further upwards. Number 2 is this. The back forward 3, I would love for Havik's back forward 3, regardless of where he is on the screen, to always land. Because if your opponent is at full screen and you let this fly, it does not land, regardless of how, regardless. The only way you can make it land is if you EX it, because it gives it a flatter arc, see? But even then, since the EX isn't necessarily fast, it's not faster at all. It's just, you just get 2 what's called. Oh, my bad, it is a little bit faster. What is that, 5, 6 frames faster or something like that? Oh no, it does not get any faster. Yeah, it doesn't get any faster, 52 frames. So basically a full second to come out, which, as slow as it is and how technically little damage it does, because if you're hitting somebody from this far away, it gets weaker, because if it's from full screen, it does 2%, right? Yeah, I believe it does 2%, but if it comes out right away, it's 6. This at least gives him better zoning options. I'd love to see that this move be faster. Instead of 26, I'd love to see it be like 20, 23 to 20 would be fine. I don't want it to be, you know, Reiko levels of fast where you're just constantly able to, you know, spam this move out. But I do think it should be faster. Speaking of this orb, another change is I would love for them to fix the EX orb. Yeah, so if Havik uses this and you hit him, the orb breaks regardless. Look, oh crap. Let it ride, regardless. It doesn't matter how far away he is. If I hit him, the orb will miss. My change, just get rid of that. Get rid of that. If I EX it and it leaves my body, if I EX this move and it leaves my body, like it's done spinning, like once it does that, regardless of what happens to Havik, it should still hit the opponent. Because that's kind of, you know, stupid. Your opponent is right there, or it could be right on top of the opponent, but because you got clipped by an attack, or your opponent, you know, started pressuring you and you just slipped up a little bit, you just lost the bar and what would have probably been really not that much damage, to be honest, because Havik overall doesn't do a lot of damage anyway. So it's not like this landing out of nowhere would be super busted or anything. Speaking of Havik's damage, I'd love to see his damage, you know, be scaled a whole lot more. Or not, let me rephrase it, Jesus Christ now. I'd love to see a lot, his damage scaling go up, you know what I mean? So let's just say a basic, you know, bread and butter of, what is it, 28%. I'd love to see that one bump up to 31, just Havik alone, you know what I mean? Not including cameos. I'd love to see it bump up to 30, maybe 31 by himself. Simply just because I don't quite get what the idea for Havik is, if that makes any sense. I can understand if, you know, if somebody's a slow character, they make up for the slowness with a bunch of damage, which isn't necessarily what Havik does. You know what I mean? Like, Havik doesn't do a lot of damage, and it's not that he necessarily does a lot of damage in bursts either. The main thing I could think of is the fact that this constantly leaves you in the mix-up. Because if your opponent tries to back dodge the command grab or the low, they're right on top of you for them to be locked back in. But if your opponent just blocks, what then? Because eventually they're going to guess right, because the command grab is way too risky to just throw out because you can get full comboed, and the low doesn't necessarily do a lot of damage anyway. What is it, 7%? Yeah, it doesn't necessarily do a lot of damage anyway. So, not to mention, you're kind of always in a deficit, or not deficit, disadvantage, that's the word. You're kind of always at a disadvantage with this mix-up, considering there's so many different options your opponent can do to pretty much just nullify it. Like, if you're Kung Lao, you can just do the obvious, you know, armored wake up with Goro or Kano or whatever, or any person that has a long enough wake up option that they can throw the attack and then have a cameo save them. Where Havik will pretty much constantly have to spend meter, mainly this, to get through it, because you can't do, you know, something like this because it's too slow, or you can't really do this because it's not really going to do anything. It'll do 8%, and that's really about it. I'd love to see Havik get more move changes than anything. Like, number one, I'd love to see Havik be able to combo from this, the low at the very least. If he can combo from the command grab too, that'd be great. But I'd love to see him combo from the low. So you go low, and then you can orb to send him a little bit higher, and do a little bit more damage. I think that that's a little bit more fair. You know what I mean? Because if you do this, your opponent is gonna always be more wary of the low, because now it's like, okay, he can combo for 20, 30, maybe even 40, depending on the situation, damage to force the opponent to block the lows for real. And then that opens up the command grab, which now is like, okay, I don't want to keep eating, you know, if this just lands alone, I don't want to keep eating 10% of damage, you know what I mean? So, you know, I'm going to start, you know, because it's free damage, obviously. So I'd like to, so I'm going to start trying to, you know, duck that. Oh, now I'm getting hit with the lows, you know, and that mix-up gets a little bit more potent. Even stuff like removing a little bit of gaps. I don't mind the gaps in almost every single, well, they're not every single string. But the main one that I'd like to see changed is Havik's tutu. If you didn't know, there's a gap right here. Right in the middle between the high overhead, there's a gap there that your opponent can, what's called through. Yeah. See, your opponent, if they're smart, they can. Yeah, there's a, like, he has a ton of gaps. Just gaps out the ass. There's a gap here. Like, I'd like to see a few of the gaps removed. I understand why the gap here exists because that move is +6, but why is there a gap here? You know what I mean? Like, the gap there really doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it just, that's kind of stupid. I'd like to see that removed. Maybe you can still flawless block it, but the gap to actually throw an attack in there is, I think that should be removed at the very least. Also, this one is a little bit more of a bug. There's two of them, I believe, that I'd like to address, but number one is the Havik bug that's been going around, where if you didn't know, if you didn't know, some characters are able to summon their cameos while Havik is doing this animation. I think I've shown it in one of my recent videos. It's a good thing I wasn't recording because ooh. See, your opponent can just call in a cameo regardless of what's happening, and it doesn't matter. That is really broken. I don't understand what happened because this wasn't a thing at first. This was not a thing against Havik at the very beginning. I want to say this was a desync, like another byproduct of the desyncs. I know Striker can do it really easily depending on who you're using. I'm not sure what other characters can do it, but being able to call, like, you effectively nullify. If you know that that bug exists, you are effectively nullifying that glitch, or you are effectively nullifying that mix-up, because every time you get grabbed, just summon your cameo and you win. You know what I mean? Like, you get grabbed for what? The grab itself is what, 10%? Or not 10%, 2%? 3%, sorry. The grab itself is 3%. Whereas, let's just say if I'm using Striker right now, the throw, or these, 3% back. So we're pretty much doing a straight 1-for-1. Oh, sorry, I'm doing way more actually. I'm doing 9% back to you. So not only that, Havik is losing the one mix-up that he has for no reason. That is not fair. I'm sure it's possible, I'm just not very good, or it depends on the character, but yes, if you're someone like Darius, you get to full combo back someone like Havik, or Havik on this mix-up, which is crazy. Yes, I mean, it's a little bit different, but yes, you can do something like the Darius into a kick for pretty much the exact same damage. That is so bold to pretty much nullify somebody's mix-ups. That is so broken to nullify somebody's mix-up. Because now all you really need to do is just take the low. And then when you see that you got hit by Havik's command grab, just calling your cameo, and you literally just get to profit from the fact that he doesn't have any way to deal with it. Yes, you see what I'm saying? That's so not that this is stupid. If your opponent grabs you, you literally can just get out of it. I personally think, well, no, regardless of how you feel about Havik, that should not be a thing. That right there should be like fixed as soon as possible, because eventually people are going to find that out, and whether it's through this video or some other video or some even in game, people are going to figure out you can just say forget his mix-up, and then at that point Havik is forced to either spend his own cameo just to counter something for a simple mix-up of 10 damage or 10%, which is so resource intensive. Havik himself is already a very resource intensive person that makes him like he is such a cameo determinative character and meter intensive that pretty much forcing you to have to constantly expend resources for 10% is kinda whack. Not even kinda, it's really whack. I would like that changed, or even just a simple one that has happened in my videos. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. Hopefully I will. But simple hit reaction changes on this. Because sometimes if your opponent is hit right before the arm lands, the game won't register the right hit reaction of the what's called. So instead of, oh, Havik was hit, it'll splat the opponent, it will try to register the game, or the game, this is all I'm guessing. I'm not saying this is exactly how it's happening, but maybe the game is registering it as it's trying to do the launcher, but instead neither happened, and your opponent just gets hit on the top of the head, and you're still recovering from the animation of the, the arm, and they can just stand back up and start walloping on you. I'd like to see that change. I really hope I can find the example in my footage. I'm pretty sure it's been documented on my channel. I think it has. I'm not 100% sure. If we were to talk about additional moves, like the addition of new moves, I'd love to see this move get a low variant. So instead of, what is this? Instead of 4-1-2-2-4, or instead of 4-1-2-2, I'd love to see it be forward 1-2-4. So you can just reuse the asset of this kick. So it could be something like this. It could be something like that. You know what I mean? You add the kick that can be comboed from. You can combo from the low and make it like -7, -8 since it's a launcher. So Havik will have to put himself out there for to get a little bit of damage, or he can go for the 4-1-2-2, or 4-1-2-2 for the plus frames, which will make this plus 12, or since this would be plus 12, or not plus 12, since this would be 12 frames, now it's 9 frames, which means now he has more ways to constantly mix up the opponent. Of course, I'd like to see more experimental stuff. Like, I'd love to see, like, this is not necessary. I would say this section is not necessary. This is just me throwing ideas into the mix, right? Just, simple ideas, because I'd love to see Havik have more. Havik's neck break. Point blank period. Remove some of the damage scaling. Because right now, let's just do a basic combo. Let's just say something like this. 10% should be like 13, should be 15, somewhere in that range. Because unless you're in the corner, this is not going to do crazy damage anyway. Because unless you're in the corner, it's not necessarily going to do crazy damage anyway. Or you have a cameo that makes it do a bunch of damage. %. So what? 2 more percent? Not necessarily that much more crazy. So let's just say if we were to take a little bit of damage scaling off, I think that right there should do 27, 28. That is fine, because I understand why you don't let, combos like that, like this, have no damage scaling, because without damage scaling, this is doing like 37%. Sorry, this is doing 40%. So being able to do 40% for free, I can understand why that's broken, and that shouldn't be a thing. I can see why you wouldn't want that. But 22% from the corner is kind of whack. Even if you were to do it in mid-screen, that's still really bad too. You know what I mean? It's not like this move is just that crazy. It's good, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's like crazy enough that y'all need to be nerfing, or not nerfing it, making it so weak that it's doing 17, 20%, because a lot of times I personally don't really want to go for it because 2 bars for 17% is not particularly good. That meter is better used for really anything else. Like, if you got, I will use this if I have them in a corner and they're within 25-ish%, because then I'll just, you know, do that to force them out to have to spend meter or something to get to me, so I can, you know, combo them and, you know, finish them off. Because really, that's the only way I really see this move being used at this point. Really, just to force your opponent out, or to just finish off rounds or matches. That's really it. Wake up options. Number 1, this is good. And it's not particularly, it's fine, but not as a wake up option. A lot of times your opponent is either going to hit you so many times that it's going to break the armor. They're going to hit you twice and then block to the point where it was no point in doing the wake up option because you're still minus and it's pretty much their turn again. Or they're going to hit you and just walk away. Especially characters with like fast movement, they'll just walk back, or they'll jump it, or they'll just, you know, show you that they'll just put the fear of God in you and flawless block it. A lot of times those characters are what Havik hates the most, honestly. Characters that can move really fast. I propose you give his punch walk the armor. Instead of this, I mean, you can keep the armor on this, but make this, make the punch walk Havik's wake up option. 23 frames is not particularly fast, but it is infinitely faster than a full second of, you know, attacks. And I think, once again, I think they are afraid of Havik being able to do what Kung Lao does. You see your opponent didn't get hit, and you just chip them out for 11%, which is really strong, don't get me wrong. But once again, I understand it, but at the same time, you're not giving Havik much to work with on Wake Up. Because it's not like he has any better options as far as special moves go to have on Wake Up. Because this takes too long. This isn't going to work at all. And armoring this for 2 bars is stupid. It's not only stupid, it's dangerous, and it's impractical at best. Once again, even then, you can just do what you're supposed to do. I mean, it would be to me, it would be no different than, you know, what Tanya does with Goro. It would be no different. Overall, I think Havik is a fine character that just needs buffs. You know what I mean? I think Havik just needs a little bit of love to at least make it to at least back around the middle of the pack. I don't necessarily, every buff should be sought after to become the de facto best character in the game. It should just be to make them better at what they do. And if by proxy that does make them the best character in game, then that's great. Because I want to see Havik used more online, because once again, I find Havik's playstyle to be very fun, very unorthodox. That was also what I was looking for. To find his playstyle very fun and unorthodox, and to constantly win through what feels like more skill, and a little bit of the fact that since Havik is more of an unknown character, it's the fact that you have a lot of people lack the matchup knowledge to take Havik down. But if Havik got better, more people play against him, which means more matchup knowledge, which means now you're really winning because of skill. But these are just some ideas I had. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What change would you add to Havik? I've been your boy Mementos. Peace.